little boy. Hey, man, I don't really like you, Mike. We ain't free, man. I've been chasing, drinking, fake. I know I ain't. Team fed my back, brr, gang.
Imagine this scenario. You just driving around Memphis in your burgundy vehicle, minding your business, when suddenly gunfire starts tearing through your car. A stray bullet hits you and leaves you unable to move from the waist down for the rest of your existence. Why? Because some street kid mistakenly believed you were connected to his enemies. This exact tragedy happened when an everyday person found themselves in the wrong place at the wrong time because of Lil Hank, the most dedicated member of Pooh Sheisty's inner circle. This young man opened fire on the completely wrong vehicle, left a man permanently immobilized, and then crashed his own car like an amateur while trying to escape. But wait, there's more to this wild story. Even sitting behind prison walls serving 18 years, this individual maintains the same mentality, bragging on social media that his rivals would already be dead if he wasn't incarcerated. No jokes here. By the time you finish watching this video, you'll realize exactly why Pooh Sheisty constantly references Lil Hank in his music, and why this person might actually be the most dangerous enforcer Memphis has ever seen. Stick with us until the very end, because we're going to walk you through the whole narrative of how dedication and devotion resulted in nearly 2 decades behind bars. Let me explain this situation clearly. Lil Hank isn't just some random person from the streets. Since the very beginning, this individual has been putting in serious effort for Chopper Gang. And when I say effort, I'm talking about the kind that landed him in prison for 18 years straight. But before we dive deeper, you need to understand just how serious this commitment really is. Hank and Pooh Sheisty have been connected since they were kids growing up in South Memphis. I'm referring to Cane Creek Apartments, where making it meant you either fully committed or you didn't survive. These young people weren't messing around. From day one, they were living that true street life. The facts back this up too. Pooh Sheisty transformed from just a Memphis artist into someone pulling millions of views from one single conflict. Hank was in the streets the entire time, making sure his crew remained safe and protected. According to street knowledge and various credible sources, Hank built his reputation early. While other young guys were focused on school and relationships, this dude was already proving himself as someone who wouldn't hesitate to do whatever was needed. That's exactly the kind of dedication that established Chopper Gang from the very start. Before we go further into Hank's background, it's crucial that you comprehend how Memphis operates, because it's completely different from most other cities. Memphis combines southern warmth with raw intensity, creating some of the nation's most unified yet most violent organizations. We're discussing a city where living where you live can cut your life expectancy by 20 years. The South. Memphis region, which is where Chopper Gang started, is particularly intense. You've got residents sleeping away from windows to prevent getting struck by stray shots, and teenagers carrying heavy weaponry as if they're everyday items. This setting produces a unique perspective. Your only option is to defend your people, no matter the cost, or you become another victim. There's no middle choice. Hank was raised in this atmosphere, where showing any weakness meant getting taken out, and proving your ride or die status meant climbing the ranks. Memphis gangs operate differently too. You see nationwide groups like Crips and Bloods, but you also have hybrid groups and smaller factions that follow their own guidelines. Chopper Gang belonged to that second group. They weren't restricted by traditional gang rules, which made them much more unpredictable and dangerous. Let me break down how Chopper Gang actually came into existence, because this wasn't some quick thing that happened overnight. Pooh Sheisty, Big 30, Lil Hank, plus a few other serious individuals from different Memphis neighborhoods made the choice to unite and make money however they could. We're talking about the 2000s period, when Memphis had that unfiltered rawness where you had to prove yourself repeatedly. Pooh Sheisty naturally took the leadership position. This guy had the ideas, the personality, and most importantly, the street respect needed to control things. His own father was already a prominent figure in Memphis criminal circles, involved in various enterprises and managing his own legal problems. That background gave Pooh automatic credibility, but it also made him a target. Every organization needs soldiers though, and that's exactly when Lil Hank stepped up. While Pooh managed finances and developed his music career, Hank operated on the ground, making sure nobody attempted to challenge Chopper Gang's standing. The organization was clear and efficient, Pooh Sheisty at the helm making decisions, and everyone else, including Hank, Big 30, and the remaining squad, following directions and accomplishing what needed accomplishing. What distinguished Hank was his enthusiasm for accepting the riskiest responsibilities. When other crew members might think twice or search for simpler options, Hank jumped at the opportunity to be in the front. This recognition gave him the position of Pooh's primary enforcer. That responsibility came with both recognition and obligations. Around 2018 to 2019, as Pooh Sheisty began gaining music industry attention, Hank continued operating in the streets to allow his friend to focus on his career without dealing with street complications. That separation of work was ideal. Pooh could be the public face, while Hank took care of the business nobody discussed. Starting out, Chopper Gang's primary goal was controlling their neighborhoods and establishing themselves. Memphis is relatively compact, where everyone is familiar with everyone else. Information travels rapidly about who's really about action and who's just speaking. Hank made certain Chopper Gang was clearly the real deal. Based on street accounts, Hank was involved in numerous situations that helped build Chopper Gang's reputation. We're discussing thefts, gunfire, and neighborhood control that generally don't show up on news reports. Nevertheless, in street communities, these situations became myths, and Hank earned respect. There's one famous situation that Memphis still discusses involving a competing group attempting to gain control of Chopper Gang's area. Instead of debating or making speeches, Hank allegedly took direct steps that communicated a powerful statement. This represented Chopper Gang's ground, and anybody attempting to modify that would experience repercussions. Hank's importance grew during this time frame. When Pooh was creating songs in Atlanta and Los Angeles studios, Hank remained in Memphis, guaranteeing nobody tried to make moves while he was absent. The street world values accomplishments, yet they also examine. Hank acted as the protection that maintained Chopper Gang's reputation. When Pooh Sheisty started achieving mainstream success, making songs alongside Lil Durk, plus different significant artists, Hank continued putting in effort at the street level. This situation was interesting. Pooh was rising to celebrity status while his primary operator remained behind the scenes, managing situations that couldn't be discussed in interviews or posts. The loyalty operated in both directions, though. Despite Pooh's explosion in popularity, he maintained awareness of who was handling Memphis. That explains why Hank appears in practically every song. Those weren't just mentions, they symbolized respect for the work happening in the background. Nevertheless, higher position brought heightened investigation by authorities. As Chopper Gang's visibility grew, so did law enforcement focus from Memphis police and government agencies. This placed additional strain on Hank, who was already functioning in a risky situation. Here comes the interesting part, everybody. Memphis contains this persistent South and North conflict that's been active for extended periods, and Chopper Gang being South-based automatically meant opposition with specific Northside groups. Their primary rival was EBG, Everyone Gangsta, and these individuals were not being nice when Pooh Sheisty delivered that section on Back in Blood featuring Lil Durk. He wasn't just rhyming. This person was communicating about a specific robbery where Chopper Gang entered EBG territory and stole valuable resources. Yeah, you know who stole that from you. Come retrieve it through force. That wasn't expressing something metaphorically. That was a personal challenge to the competition. The occasion Pooh discussed involved Chopper Gang associates under Hank's direction entering an EBG location and taking multiple guns. This wasn't merely stealing. It was a strategic action designed to humiliate EBG and demonstrate that Chopper Gang could strike anywhere. The psychological damage was as important as the physical losses. The problem intensified when EBG answered with their Back in Blood response track, essentially announcing conflict against Chopper Gang. They distributed CGK, Chopper Gang Killer, merchandise and apparel. However, Hank wasn't prepared to just respond through music. Based on reports from Memphis streets, Hank was advocating for quick counterattacks, planning to demonstrate to EBG that Chopper Gang was more than just musicians. They represented serious business. However, EBG wasn't the only group with Chopper Gang problems. Memphis street dynamics involve several groups, organizations, and personal conflicts that together form a complicated situation ready to explode suddenly. Hank found himself managing multiple problems. He was consistently ready to maintain Chopper Gang's image. Hank's position as Chopper Gang's dedicated representative indicated that all of Pooh's problems turned into his problems to manage. This meant Hank existed in perpetual readiness, prepared to act against possible risks that might not actually exist. The stress from being the primary soldier for an organization gathering rivals faster than they could monitor was wearing him down. The street environment also included smaller groups and individual problems that weren't discussed publicly, yet were equally risky. Memphis contains a value system where disrespect requires rapid response. Hank carried responsibility for delivering that reaction on behalf of Chopper Gang. Now we arrive at the moment that caused Hank's arrest. This is where dedication transformed into nearly 2 decades in prison. It was 2020, and Memphis street tension had reached highest levels. Chopper Gang had numerous active conflicts, and everyone was cautiously observing. The Back in Blood song had turned into a national hit, bringing extra visibility to Memphis streets and raising stakes for all participants. Hank was traveling across the city, likely taking care of gang business, when he spotted a red Infinity. You must grasp the psychology. When you're actively battling multiple organizations, every unfamiliar vehicle presents danger. Every stranger could represent an adversary. This ongoing state of stress is precisely what the streets inflict on your thoughts. This is the moment things fell apart, everybody. Hank felt certain he recognized that automobile. He suspected the enemies were moving via Chopper Gang's neighborhood. The vehicle resembled descriptions of autos EBG members had been operating. In that single moment, Hank made a choice that would modify several people's lives permanently. Without thinking, this individual started shooting, assuming he was defending his group and conveying a warning to his competitors. From his perspective, this was just conducting his daily responsibilities for Chopper Gang. He might have imagined he was terminating an opponent and gaining respect from his organization. But, surprising turn, it wasn't opposing forces whatsoever. It was an ordinary resident, probably heading home from his job or dealing with responsibilities, who unfortunately had a car matching what the competitors had. The regular person received numerous gunshots and became paralyzed from his midsection downward. His entire existence changed instantaneously from mistaken vehicle identification. The injured individual was simply working to sustain his family. He had 0 gang associations, participated in no street conflicts, and had no awareness that operating a red vehicle in that location at that moment would take away his ability to move. Within moments, he transformed from somebody managing his life independently to requiring help for every daily task. Now here's something that illustrates this dedication to crew mentality perfectly. Rather than examining whether he got the correct target, Hank attempted to get away. Yet, fate intervened quickly. While operating at high speeds, presumably experiencing anxiety about his actions, he couldn't manage the automobile and collided with something stable. The accident was intense enough to make the car non-functional and trap him at the location. Individuals watching called emergency services, and when they showed up, they located Hank, still inside his damaged automobile, unable to leave. The evidence was clear. Bullet remains, individual accounts, and Hank's position at the location made it straightforward. That accident determined what happened next. Law enforcement discovered him at the location, connected him to the violence, and case closed. Game finished. An 18-year penalty for serious assault, and a working person stuck in a wheelchair for life. Everything happened because Hank was so dedicated to performing his job for Chopper Gang that he didn't pause to ensure he was targeting correctly. The court case versus Hank was simple yet heartbreaking. The legal team had physical proof, person accounts, and an understandable reason based on Memphis gang disputes. Hank's attorneys attempted different strategies, though the proof was simply too powerful to fight against. During the court proceedings, information came out regarding the victim's conditions. The person wasn't simply immobilized. He required continuous health support, regular doctor visits, and emotional recovery. His loved ones required complete life modifications to manage his new situation. The actual impact of Hank's rapid choice became obvious in that room. The judge, in communicating the 18-year decision, particularly mentioned how unnecessary the crime was. This wasn't about protection or even revenge against an enemy gang member. This involved a regular individual becoming a victim of street violence by pure misfortune. For Hank's relations, the judgment was heartbreaking. They misplaced a relative, youngster, and companion to a system that gave no grace for gang offenses. Nevertheless, they had to manage understanding that Hank's decisions had broken another family's world. That single moment's results extended far beyond the immediate individuals involved. You might believe that 2 decades in prison would change someone's perspective, create self-reflection, and perhaps produce regret. However, not this individual. Lil Hank maintained his aggressive street attitude from his cell. Based on reports and internet posts, after his conviction, Hank sustained his mindset. This person actually went on social networks declaring that his adversaries continued existing just because he remained imprisoned. Can you picture that? This young guy actually declared that his opposition should appreciate his incarceration because he'd eliminate them otherwise. That demonstrates serious street mentality. The statement displayed zero regret toward the innocent target, no recognition of the miscalculation that led to his imprisonment. Instead, Hank appeared to view his jail time as temporary, rather than payback for his conduct. This behavior demonstrated the extent that street dedication had embedded itself in his thoughts. Commitment operates in both directions here too. Even though Hank's miscalculation cost an innocent individual his mobility and put him in prison for nearly 2 decades, Pooh Sheisty continues to support and maintains Hank's significance in his recordings. This represents the kind of connection Chopper Gang constructed, together forever, regardless of repercussions. The continual references in Pooh's recordings provide multiple purposes. They keep Hank's position alive in street awareness. They convey to remaining Chopper Gang associates that dedication brings benefits even through difficult circumstances. They reinforce the belief that Hank represented a fighter who surrendered for the group. Law enforcement implemented Hank's scenario as a cautionary story regarding why organized gang action required harsher intervention. The circumstance of an innocent person becoming permanently immobilized as a result of street conflicts supplied law enforcement with additional justification in their battle against street organization. For additional Memphis inhabitants, Hank's situation performed as both caution and peculiar motivation. Certain people examined the 18-year consequence and concluded that street existence carried excessive danger. Remaining people saw Hank's dedication to Chopper Gang and regarded him as a symbol of standing firm when facing difficulty. But truthfully, folks, this scenario demonstrates the negative aspects of that ride-or-die dedication. Hank felt so eager to establish himself and maintain his crew that he committed an action that harmed multiple individuals. The shot individual remains unable to move, managing healthcare bills, routine doctor visits, and an essentially distinct life. His loved ones potentially handle the psychological and money problems of supporting someone with lasting disability. The victim's experience represents something typically neglected in these narratives. He went from managing his existence autonomously with ambitions to depending on others for fundamental requirements. The mental suffering of suddenly becoming immobilized impacts not just him, however, the people he cares about. And what for? A car confusion that shouldn't have taken place if Hank had simply paused to confirm his focus. Instead of operating as Pooh Sheisty's right hand, assisting create the Chopper Gang business, he's confined to a jail cell for 18 years, losing his greatest years and seeing his partners prosper from cells. The street community respects dedication, definitely, though there's a line between dedication and stupidity. Hank exceeded that threshold, and currently, all involved are paying consequences. The victim, his household, Hank himself, plus even Chopper Gang since they misplaced their primary warrior to an avoidable miscalculation. That's the genuine situation with that street mentality that gets celebrated in recordings. It seems impressive in the music and generates street reputation, yet once it fails, the results are everlasting. Hank evolved from being Pooh Sheisty's most depended on warrior into serving as a warning about what takes place when dedication becomes careless. The system that creates street soldiers focuses on the concept that displaying your commitment via violence represents the greatest kind of recognition. Yet this perspective disregards the permanent impacts of these actions. It elevates immediate fame over lasting autonomy and achievement. Looking at everything, Lil Hank's situation demonstrates both a demonstration of dedication plus a lesson regarding the expense of that dedication. This young individual was prepared to surrender everything for Chopper Gang. Ultimately, that's precisely what occurred. He surrendered everything and lost. Pooh Sheisty proceeded to finalize significant arrangements with Gucci Mane, plus Atlantic Records, producing 60,000 sales initial period and transforming into one of hip-hop's prominent names. Simultaneously, the individual who supported that safety is completing 18 years for an avoidable miscalculation. The situation is tragic. As Pooh constructed his business, the individual securing that company harmed himself attempting to protect it. Finally, Hank's scenario communicates that street soldier life isn't enduring. You may collect recognition in communities. Your name might appear in recordings. However, when issues develop, you're the person in that jail space while everyone progresses. The streets will consistently recognize Little Hank as Pooh Sheisty's most dedicated follower, the person who would compromise everything for his group. Yet the individual in that wheelchair will identify him as the individual who transformed his trajectory permanently through vehicle confusion. That represents the genuine expense of this existence. Everybody. The recordings make it look exciting, though the facts are 18-year penalties and permanently disabled individual. Hank comprehended that lesson through experience and currently maintains plenty of moments to evaluate if that dedication truly justified the price. What's your viewpoint on this scenario? Did Hank's dedication demonstrate loyalty or just bad judgment?